Okay, this video is going to talk about suspended cymbals. We didn't talk about suspended cymbals when we talked about crash cymbals, because I had intended to do that with gongs and other stuff. I'm going to have to set up in C100 and do some videos on gongs sometime next week. Suspended cymbals are the alternate color to crash cymbals, right? So we talked about crash cymbals. You want a big, dramatic, articulate impact, right? You crash two pieces of metal together. If you want something with more wash, then you would use a suspended cymbal. So the cymbal is essentially the same as a crash cymbal. It just doesn't have the handle, although sometimes you'll see people take one crash cymbal and put it on what's called a gooseneck stand. There's a photo of this in your book, so that a single crash cymbal can hang. I just use normal cymbal stands. I have never found gooseneck cymbal stands to be any better. So cymbal's going to hang freely on your cymbal stand. The typical thing that you're going to play on a suspended cymbal is a roll of some type to give a sort of white noise wash. So I'll get some yarn mallets. You can also use vibraphone mallets, but yarn marimba mallets are typically work best. And so you're going to roll. This is important. The best way to roll to get a wash of sound instead of rhythm, it's sort of the same as on timpani. You want to activate as much of the plate, this is called a plate, as much of the cymbal as possible. So we're going to roll all the way at the edge, 180 degrees apart. Right? So with the mallets here, I can't tell you, every year I go into Allstate and I see kids do suspended cymbal rolls like they're doing snare drum rolls right in front of them, and they play halfway up the cymbal and make this like super articulate sound. Right? It's got that tickiness in it because they're getting into the core of the mallet, right? You want to roll slow and with the mallets as far away from each other as possible. And as always, very rarely are durations or specific articulations indicated in the notation, so it's up to the player and you as the teacher to use your ears and context and decide if you want that roll to decay all the way or to decay for some point and then mute on a specific count, or you can do chokes. Right? So you choke it with your hands, and again, just like timpani, don't be bashful. You got to use your body a little bit. Right? So you don't have to do it with your fingers. Right? You can use your hands. So that's rolls. That's fairly typical. If you need to play a single sort of crash sound, you will get a fuller sound if you use both mallets together. Again, the idea is to activate as much of the plate as possible. So if you have just a single quarter note strike, you'll get some amount of sound there, but you'll get more sound if you use both mallets together. Snare drum sticks on the cymbal is very typical. You sort of know this instinctively because that's how you play similar ideas on the drum set. And depending on how much articulation and how much decay you want in the sound, you can strike at the edge, or closer to the middle, or all the way up on the bell. You can do things like rolls. For a typical soft roll, I'll do it like I would do on snare drum, where I'll roll with the sticks together. Actually, I'll come over to the other side of the cymbal so that you can see on the front side of the cymbal. I would not perform this way. I'd perform closer to me, but so that you guys can see. Right? If I take that roll out to the edge, and then if I spread the hand. That last option I don't find particularly musical. At that point, you're trying to do too much with too much space. It's better to just if you're going to do a closed, press roll, buzz roll, it's better to just keep the sticks together. But if you're doing a single stroke roll with mallets, you definitely want to space them out. Same thing with snare drums. You can have single hits. Again, you can use the tip or the shoulder of the stick depending on how much articulation and sound you need. You can choke with your hand or with your full arm if you need to. The other thing that you can do is you might see a cymbal scrape notated. In older literature, this would be scrape with coin. You don't really have to use a coin anymore. Typically, we just use a triangle beater. Nice little effect. We do that same thing on gongs as well. You can mess around with trying different materials. I actually have threaded screw rods that are about a foot long that I can, you sort of get a sound like a super metal weiro with a cymbal, Also, an interesting alternate is sometimes people that will have a single strike, right, which we did with 2 mallets before. But if they want a lot more articulation in that, maybe they'll strike with 1 mallet and 1 stick. Right, so you have a very, very wide variety of colors possible through a single instrument just by switching up a couple mallets. Cymbals come in all shapes and sizes. Each one has its own different sound and texture and personality. Typical Turkish cymbals are by far the standard, but a couple other situations that you might run into. Smaller splash cymbals. These are typically cymbals that are 12 inches and smaller. Your typical suspended cymbal would be 13 inches or larger. 13 all the way up to about 20 or 22, I guess, would probably be the largest one I'd see. Anything other than smaller than 12 inches is a splash cymbal. So this is an effect cymbal. Right, so lots of pieces call for those as little color accents. And the other thing is Chinese cymbals, which sound very different and are shaped much differently than Turkish cymbals. So you can see here, the Chinese cymbal has a boss. These are cymbals that would typically be held in traditional Chinese contexts. And you can also see the cymbal has what we call a flange. If you turn the cymbal over, you can see that the shape of the cymbal actually changes direction, right? So there's a part that goes up and a part that goes down. Much, much different sound than Turkish cymbals, but you can play them all the same way. Has a little bit of a whitewash, a white noise spectrum similar to a gong. And again, you can strike with single stick. What is also typical is that people will turn them over, especially for people coming from drum set backgrounds. They will almost always have this cymbal turned over so that you can strike where that direction change is. So I'll put it on the stand there like that. But typically you'll play it like a suspended cymbal where it will hang freely upside down. All right, so that's a little bit about suspended cymbals.